Hey, this is Frederick from Avassa. In this video, which will be a longer video, I will actually show you how I usually work when I create an application spec for an existing application. So in this video, we're gonna build a WordPress application with a MySQL backend. We're gonna use the images from Docker Hub, and we're gonna take it step by step, the way that I usually work with this. What I've done to prepare is I have a setup with two sites, and on the sites I have edited two things. I've allowed for ingress addresses to be allocated. In my case, I use DHCP. This is for the WordPress, for the web server, so we can actually browse to it from a browser. The other thing is I've specified local volumes. I know that both MySQL and WordPress needs volume mounts, so I've added that. I won't go into details on that. For that, please check our documentation on docs avassa.io. With that said, let's get started. So we'll create the scaffolding in the UI, and then I will actually work from the terminal with the files offline, so I can store them in a GitLab repo, for example. But let's create the application, WordPress, give it a version 1.0. Gonna give start by creating one service for WordPress itself. So we call this the web service. Gonna add a container, WordPress, and here I'm gonna get the image from Docker Hub. So I'm gonna type in the URL, which is registry-1 docker.io/WordPress. That's good. Then we're gonna add the second service that I'll just call DB. And here we also have a container, MySQL, and same thing, registry1 docker.io/MySQL. And I'm actually gonna save it here. I know it won't work. We're gonna get a few errors, but I wanna see that we can get hold of the images. So let's do a refresh, and here we're actually good. So now we at least have the images in our system. And to get to the first thing that we'll fix, we're gonna deploy this. So I'll create a WordPress deployment, choose my app, choose my version, system site equals edge, system type equals edge. That will deploy to both my sites. So I'll submit this, and we can actually go back to applications here and hit view. So I will actually get a few errors now, and you can see them popping up here. So both MySQL and WordPress needs volumes mounted. And we'll add that, but now I'm actually gonna switch into my terminal. So let me go here, let's clear this up. And first thing I'll do is I'm gonna get the application specification from our APIs and store it locally. So I have subctl set up, pointing to my environment. So I'll do a show config applications WordPress, and I'm gonna store that. We can just look at it. You will see the scaffolding there that we added in the UI. I'll store this in wordpress.app.yaml. And now I'm actually gonna open this one up in my editor. So first thing we need to fix is to get those volumes in there. And the easiest way to do that is we're gonna switch over to Firefox here, look at our APIs, and what I'm gonna look for is a couple of things. So we're gonna need to create volumes. So let's scroll up here a bit. So we can use this one, for example. So we're gonna create an ephemeral volume for each of these, and we're gonna mount those volumes into the container when it starts. So let's make a copy of that one, and then we go back in here, and for each service now we're gonna add a volume. This one I'll call just WordPress. Let's make it 50 megabytes. Then I'm gonna add the same thing to the database. I call this one MySQL, and we also make it 50 megabytes. Here you can use persistent volumes if you like. I'm just gonna stick with ephemeral volumes for this one. Again, please check our documentation for the details on that. Okay, so we have the volumes in place. Now we need to mount those volumes into the containers. So let's start with Word. And again, if I go back to the documentation, scroll down a bit here to containers, you can see how you do a mount. So let's copy this one, and I'm gonna go back here so I can actually see the errors. So var lib MySQL and var dub HTML. So let's do the first mount here. Oops. So let's take WordPress, mount it into var dub HTML. Gonna copy this one, and we do the same thing here. So fix that typo. WordPress. Take the MySQL data, and that was var lib data, I think. Let me double check that. Var lib MySQL. So that will hopefully allow the containers to start. So what I'll do is I'll do a replace. So what this does, it replaces the version of the app that I have in our APIs with what I have here locally. And now if I go back into the UI, we can see that it's restarting. Still getting some errors. So let's try to figure out what's happening here. Let's go to logs. Apparently MySQL is not happy. So I'll do since 5 minutes, and we're gonna start the query. Okay, here is something. Okay, so database is uninitialized and password option is not specified. You need to specify one of the following. Root password allowed. Okay, so MySQL needs more configuration to start. So let's go to the MySQL page here, and if we scroll down here a bit, we can actually see that we need to pass in a few things like a password, the name of the database, a user, and a password that we're going to use from WordPress to access this. So we're going to set all of that up, but I don't want to mount the secrets into the environment. I'm gonna opt in to use the _ file options for a few of these in MySQL. So first thing we'll do is we're gonna go back into the UI here, and we're gonna create secrets. So let's create a vault called WordPress. We'll choose WordPress here. This means that wherever this application goes, we will distribute this vault together with that deployment. Then I'm gonna call this one, let's see here, let's call this one DB Creds. We're gonna add a username, let's say Frederick. Gonna add a password, secret. And here we can do a few things. Let's add a root password here in case we need it. Root password, super secret. And we'll save those. Okie doke, so now we have a WordPress vault with a secret store called dbcreds. So let's start getting these values into the containers. So now I'm going to go back into the terminal and I'm going to add another volume here up here. So here I will create a volume called dbcreds. And this one will be a vault secret where the vault is named WordPress, the one we just created. The secret is called dbcreds. And let's just leave it as that. I know I'm gonna need these credentials in WordPress as well to be able to connect to the database. So I'll just add them there. Then I'm gonna start adding environment variables. So the first thing we're gonna set is MySQL user file. And this will make sense shortly. So we put this in creds username. So this tells MySQL that it will find the username in a file called username in a directory called creds. And to actually get that in there, we'll add a mounts from volume name dbcreds and mount path /creds. So this will take all the secrets, username, password, and root password from this vault and mount that into this path. So let's add a few more. We had a MySQL password file, call that password. We had a MySQL, let me check the name, root password file, root password, and that one had to be root password. We're also gonna add a MySQL database that we call WordPress. So this will be the name of the actual database. So let's try to replace the application again with this one and go back into the UI and see what's happening. So I'll go back to applications. And now it actually looks like we're in good shape. The database is up and running, the web server is up and running, but we haven't really configured the web server to be able to talk to the database. But before we do that, I'm gonna add an ingress address to the web server. That means we're gonna allocate an IP address so I can reach and talk to the web server from my browser. Let's go to the documentation and I'm going to scroll a bit up and down here until I find network. So I'm going to copy this one that gives me an ingress address and I'm going to edit up here. Let's add here network and this will be on port 80. So this will instruct the system to allocate an IP address for WordPress and whitelist port 80. So again, if I do a replace and I go into our UI, what you will see here is I've now received an ingress address. So let's go to that address and see what happens. We will see an error there. Welcome to WordPress. So we need to provide it with a few things, which we haven't. So let's go to the documentation for WordPress, scroll down a bit, and here we can actually see that we need to provide it with a few things. So let's copy this one and go back into the terminal, and we're going to do pretty much the same thing here. I'm going to add these. I'm going to paste those in, clean it up a bit. DB host will actually just be DB, and this should match this name, the service name, which will actually resolve in the DNS. Then we're gonna mount in the creds the same way we just did. So I'm gonna do the same thing here, mount the database credentials into that. And do the same trick, user file, :/creds, username, the password file is /creds password, and the DB name should match what we had below, and I think I put WordPress there. So let's see if this works. Let's replace the applications again, render application again, and go back here. We can see that it's starting, it's up and running again, and now if I go here, see what happens. Okay, so something is wrong. This could be a few things. So let's go back and check what we have. I suspect this is because we have something in the volume. So a quick way to test that would actually be to undeploy the app. That will clean up the volumes and then put it back and see if that helps. So let's start, let's try to do that. So I'll use our subctl edit to edit the deployment real quick. And I just put some bogus stuff in here, something that won't match any site. That will actually delete the application from those sites. And now if I go back and change that like that, the application and the volumes will be freshly created. So let's check the progress. So it's starting, now it's up and running, still preparing volumes. Okay, so let's see if we still get the same error if we go here now. Error establishing a database connection. So something is still wrong. WordPress is not able to establish that database connection. So instead of, let's do view logs, we do since 5 minutes and start query. See if we have anything in here. Okay, so here is something interesting. It says we can't read username and password, and I suspect I know what this is, but let's check this. So let's go into the terminal and do site 1 applications, WordPress service instances, web containers. So this will do an exec interactive. So now I'm actually in the container. And if we look at that creds directory, you can see that this is readable by root only. But if we do a PSAUX, you will see that we actually have other processes running here, and they are actually running as a different user. And to figure out that, we have two options. Either we can mount the credentials as this user, or we can cheat a bit. And I'm actually gonna cheat. So let's go to this volume here. And what I'll do is I'll put in a file mode. And I'll set that as 444. That basically means that everyone can read those files. And maybe this is typically not something that you would want to do in the real world. Then you would figure out the right users and make sure that only that user can read those credential files in the container. But here I'm going to cheat a bit. So again, let's do the replace. And now if we go back into the UI, let's wait for it to start up. Again, I'm gonna do the WordPress container. Do since, start the query. And I hope that these are from our previous run. So let's see, this actually looks good. So let's go back in here, refresh this one, and lo and behold, here we actually are. I actually get the installation site. So let's try video site, Frederick, secret. Let's do the secret password. See if it works. Log in, Frederick, secret. And here we are. So that's great. Now we actually have our application up and running. And I'll just briefly go back into the UI here, refresh, and we can do an edit to just quickly sum up what we did. So we added the WordPress application, 2 services, web and DB. Oh, for some reason it didn't refresh. Oh, here we are. Web and DB, added volumes for the data, volumes for credentials that we stored in Strongbox. We configured the environment for so WordPress and MySQL can find the credentials. And finally, on the WordPress service, we added an ingress address that allows our system to allocate an IP address, and we open up port 80 on that one. So that concludes our video.